Well, Carol, it's a new year, a new you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just making sure that my private jet's doing okay because, there was a climate crisis.
I
So
know.
obviously it was very important for me to take my private jet to go talk about the climate crisis and then have steak dinners while I tell everybody that meat is bad. So, just trying to get that all together.
It is so crazy. By the way, did you hear today? Let me see. It was just approved. Where is it? It was, the European Union has just approved cricket powder as a component of flour-based foods.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's
Amazing.
great.
Sounds tasty. I'm looking very forward to that.
I unfortunately have a deep allergy to crickets, so I can't have anything with crickets in it. It's too bad, but
we're all gonna develop a cricket allergy. It's part of our polycrisis.
Yes, and I want to play this clip. This is from the World Economic Forum last week. Listen to this.
What is a polycrisis, and how and when could it happen?
We're actually in the midst of one at the moment. We have an energy crisis and food crisis and economic downturn that are all happening at the same time. It's the set of concurrent cascading risks that happen at the same time. So that's where we are today. That's 2023. What we're seeing, though, is that in the 2-year time frame and the 10-year time frame, we're at a risk of more of these polycrises unfolding. 2 years out, there's still a concern among the experts that we surveyed that cost of living is going to be number one, but at the same time, a big risk of natural disasters. 10 years out, it's all about climate.
All natural disasters, nothing else but natural disasters. She doesn't seem to find any irony in the fact that we're in an energy crisis and a food crisis and a trust crisis when all of those come directly from the policies of the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, first of all, I have to say it sounds more regal if you say it with sort of like a British accent. A polycrisis sounds much more terrifying, so I think we should do that. But it is. It's so ironic that they're sitting here and they're talking about the inflation, they're talking about the energy issues, they're talking about the mistrust and disinformation that came from the policies that stemmed from global governments and the World Economic Forum. I mean, they are the ones that shut down and said we need to have this wonderful, great. They're the ones, the central banks around the world that printed trillions of dollars. They're the ones that moved away from traditional energy because of the push from the World Economic Forum. So they've caused these crises, all of them, except for this global client emergency that clearly nobody's paying enough attention to. So we now have to add it to our polycrisis or have Al Gore go on an unhinged rant to make it extra special.
Can you give direct correlation to our inflation from ESG?
100%. If you think about what inflation looks like, a large percentage of that was gas, but some of that was shipping costs related to the cost of gas. And then, fossil fuels have 6,000 derivative products that all went up in price because of the cost. And the cost went up because we didn't have enough supply, and we didn't have enough supply because of ESG policies. ESG policies directed capital away from investments in fossil fuel to the extent that Saudi Arabia and OPEC says that we're underinvested by like $12.1 trillion over the next coming decades. So by doing that, by ensuring that companies who make the investments in drilling and processing for fossil fuels couldn't do that, they are directly attributable to the increase in prices as well as, the obvious direct correlation to the increased energy prices.
So here is something that you're hearing, and you're just hearing the setup right now that the Republicans are going to be so dangerous on this debt ceiling. And we are just going to default on all of our debts, and we will have no credibility. We have no credibility now, but we're not going to default on our debts. But they are talking about the debt ceiling. Why should the average person care about this?
So the reality is we shouldn't care about the debt ceiling. We should care about spending. I mean, the debt ceiling is just saying that we cannot finance our overspending with debt anymore. But they don't do that at the same time that they pass the bills. They do it after the fact. So they've already spent the money and you have to pay for it. short term, we're not going to default on our debt. It's just stupid. We have plenty of assets that we could lease or we could sell if we got into a pickle or things that could be rejiggered around. But in the medium to long term, the spending is unsustainable. And so if you overspend and you have a deficit, there are only so many ways to find it. And we're probably not selling off all our assets at this point in time. So that means you're going to finance it with debt. And it's just going to become bigger and bigger to the point that it becomes unsustainable from a tax standpoint, from a money printing and erosion of your wealth and value standpoint. And so that's really the area that this whole debt thing is kind of like the sideshow at the circus. Right. We need to be focusing on the main act, and that is the spending. And I've said this before, Glenn, if we just rolled back like 5 years, if we went back to 2018 spending, which, 2 years before the pandemic, or even the year before the pandemic, we would be running a surplus. We could be paying down debt, or 2019, we would be about breaking even. So it's not like we have to change that much to get this under control, and they refuse to do it.
Okay. There was a call last week for a windfall tax on food companies. I've never heard anything more dangerous and stupid than that.
So there is a legendary investor named Charlie Munger. He is Warren Buffett's partner in Berkshire Hathaway, one of the best. And he has this famous saying that says, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." The reality is that taxes influence behavior. And if you don't want something, you tax it. That's
Correct.
What you do, right? Show me the incentive.
A tax on SUVs.
Right, a tax on, sin products, cigarettes, Correct. Alcohol. We don't want them, we tax those things. And oh, by the way, the things that we want, we get tax credits, right? All of these green initiatives.
Marriage, kids, all of it. Yeah.
So here's what you're saying. We're going to tax food. It is saying we do not want you to produce food. Who says that other than utterly nefarious and crazy people who want people to starve? It is utter insanity. And the fact that people are like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We should definitely put a tax on food is,
first of all, that does not hurt anybody at Davos, but it hurts the very poorest among us in the world. And I'm not even talking about America. I mean the poor of the poor, and they're already in a food shortage. These people are so anti-human. They do want people to starve. They also, said that they are raising, I think it's $3 trillion privately and with the help of governments to buy farmland, to buy up 30% of the land, eventually 50% on the entire planet.
Yes.
And they're talking about 30% by the end of this decade, and they're going to do it with fundraising. I mean, the guy who was talking about it was John Kerry. I mean, it's insanity. When will people understand? They mean you will own nothing.
Perhaps when they read my next book, which you have been instrumental in helping shape, which ironically is called You Will Own Nothing, and so connect the dots between all of these things that they're saying and the destruction of our property rights and freedom. I mean, when they come out and say, oh, you will own nothing, that's a right-wing conspiracy. It's not. It was on their website in an article in 2016, which now I think they have pulled. So
they have.
We can go use the Wayback Machine to resource it. Then they made a video that they put their logo on, that it was their first prediction. So they're predicting the end of private property. This is not a coincidence. And by the way, it's not like a cute little Jetson fantasy. It's not Rosie the robot folding your laundry. Like, these are scary things that they're going, this is going to be great for you. This is not great. And so going through all the different things that we've been talking about, ESG, the purchase of land by private individuals, it is scary how much has been purchased by a small group of people. And as you said, the government is now paying to take some of that farmland out of commission. There are reasons for this. There are sort of empire cycle reasons for this. And there is a jockeying of the elite to put themselves in position to rule everything.
What do you mean an empire building process? What do you mean?
End of empire. So basically, we are where the Romans were at one point in time, where the British were, where the Dutch were.
Yeah.
And there's this sort of disconnect between high debt loads and power. And when we're in a high debt load situation like the US is, and frankly, a number of other countries, the people in charge get desperate and they start doing desperate things. They never cut back on services. They never try to salvage it. They just kind of run straight into that cliff. And it's happened many, many times in history, and we're moving in that direction. The elites see this. So all these things that we're seeing is basically them trying to reshape the outcome and put themselves up on top by having you own nothing.
I'm going to go back to owning nothing and what that does to a nation that was built around ownership. That is a total reversal of the basic foundation of America and most of the Western world now. More with Carol Roth. I'm sure you could. Can you order the book yet?
No, but you can sign up for more information at carolroth.com/Glenn, and we'll let you know.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be a good book. I have seen the outlines, and it's really, she's good. So what does this mean, Carol? The idea that you will own nothing in a country that's whole identity and whole theory is that you can become wealthy, you can change your station by even land ownership. Just being able to own something and call it yours is fundamental to the American experiment. What does that do to us?
I mean, if you own nothing, then the powers that be own you. I mean, it completely changes everything. It crushes the American dream. And it basically makes people indentured servants to the government and, to some extent to big tech as well. I mean, that's really, if you think about all of these things that are being put out there, they sort of want to take your life and rent it back to you, whether it be through a terms of service or through, dependence on the government. But that is the goal, is that they want that interdependence. They want you to not have freedom, not to have agency, not to make your own choice. They want to control everything you do. And it's coming, from a wealth standpoint, it's coming from a technology standpoint, it's coming from a cultural standpoint, social credit. So, really, this is a war, and this is one that you're going to have to fight on multiple fronts. And at the end of the day, we need people to own everything. We need you to have that ownership so that you can fight back and not be at their whim and not be an indentured servant to the slates, to big technology, to big business, and to the global elite.
If we don't stop the regulatory state, the unelected officials, from just being able to introduce new rules on things, if we don't stop that, you won't own anything, because they will make it so onerous that there's no way you could afford to own it. They don't have to take it if you're so broke that there's nothing else you can do but sell it.
Yeah, it used to be that when they were looking for riches, they would go out and they would invade another land and they would take those riches. And obviously that's, somewhat politically unpopular. But for whatever reason, this legal plunder, the idea that they're stealing our wealth and doing it in a legal way because they're passing the rules and the regulations that we have to deal with, somehow is more palatable to people. And it shouldn't be. This is your wealth.
That's the Sheriff of Nottingham story. I mean, all the king did was just say, hey, what's yours is now mine.
Right.
Go, sheriff, go out and take it. And he would take it. That's Robin Hood. This is the part that they always get wrong. They think Robin Hood worked for the government. No, Robin Hood was against the government because they were doing exactly what they're proposing to do to the entire world now.
Yeah, and if you look at just like a case study like Venezuela, who, mid last century was the fourth wealthiest nation in the world, and they used this rhetoric. They said things are unequal and we wanted to make it more fair. So, us in the government, we're going to just nationalize everything. We're going to take it over and you'll be so much better off. And with that, they went from the fourth wealthiest country in the world to, a recent study showed that the median net worth of a person in Venezuela was zero, literally zero. So that is, a very clear case study on how quickly this can happen. And to say, oh, it'll never happen here in America, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe I agree with you, Glenn, but look what just happened over the past few years. Look at the level of compliance with these COVID rules and regulations. They took away people's jobs and livelihoods. Of course, they're going to continue down this path.
I remember saying in 2008, we stay on this path, we will be Venezuela. Venezuela had just really collapsed, and I realized at the time, and I said it at the time, it took 20 years to take that strong state that was the fourth wealthiest and destroy it. Well, we are now approaching a 20-year mark where we have been doing it. It's not out of the realm of possibility. In fact, every day we continue down this road, it becomes more likely. All right, her new book coming out soon, You Will Own Nothing. CarolRoth.com/Glenn will get you all of the information. CarolRoth.com/Glenn. Carol, talk to you again.
The Glenn Beck Program.
Thanks, Glenn.